The Bible is now a high-budget anime. Which scene do you look forward to the most and why? Judges chapter 15 verse 15. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Samson was a fluffing Bible badass. Anything with the angels, angelic beings, provided they're illustrated as they're meant to be, you know, with a fluffton of heads and wings and oddly shaped and objectively horrifying. The time some king traded his daughter for a pile of foreskins. I don't know. I didn't read the manga. David slaying Goliath. Jesus kicking the garbage out of the money changers in the temple. The end of days, Book of Revelation of course. Then again, considering everyone and everything dies, Evangelion pretty much covers it already. Moses gone part the sea with a fluffin' Beyblade. The story of Cain and Abel would be a top fluffing tier anime if strung out into 20 or so episodes. When Noah-san gets everyone onto the giant Gundam to fight the flood kaiju sent from God. Judges chapter 3 verses 16 to 23. Now Ehud had made a double-edged sword about 1.5 feet long, which he strapped to his right thigh under his clothing. He presented the tribute to Eglon king of Moab, who was a very fat man. After Ehud had presented the tribute, he sent on their way those who had carried it. But on reaching the stone images near Gilgal, he himself went back to Eglon and said, "Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you." The king said to his attendants, "Leave us," and they all left. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his palace and said, "I have a message from God for you." As the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh and plunged it into the king's belly. Even the handle sank in after the blade, and his bowels discharged. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. Then Ehud went out to the porch, he shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. Just imagine how badass that'd beat it, spelling God sending a bear to kill 40 children. That one story where Dinah got raped and then her brothers got the entire town to get circumcised and then killed them. The splitting of the Red Sea by Moses. The scene from the Ten Commandments movie is phenomenal, though admittedly, it's a bit outdated by today's standards. The scene from Prince of Egypt is just absolutely glorious. A stupidly high-quality recreation of it, even if it's an anime, would be phenomenal. The plagues of Egypt, especially seeing the dust turn into gnats. Nothing can top the best anime adaptation of all time, The Prince of Egypt. This thread just made me realize that I want all religions to have an anime. Honestly, it could be dark as hell with some light-hearted and wholesome scenes thrown in, of course. Try to be as true to source material as possible. The entire book of Revelation is going to be completely off the chain. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace because it would be lit. The temptation of Christ would be pretty dope. The classic battle of the wits between good and evil, everyone loves that garbage. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Ya man, let me see a dragon. 2 Kings chapter 10 verses 18 to 28. Jehu, who just became king, calls all the worshippers of Baal to a great feast. He packs them into the temple of Baal, puts guards at the entrance to keep anyone from leaving, and then slaughters everyone inside and tears down the temple. It's sort of a biblical red wedding. It's called VeggieTales. Seeing the angels appear. Their descriptions are so creepy. Samson getting jumped countless times and giving that woman a new answer. Especially if worded like a specific Bible where he tells her that if he was bound in undried thongs, he would lose his strength. The Battle of Jericho, especially the song playing during the battle, since the legendary weapon of the fight scene is a musical instrument. I'm pretty sure that's also the fight scene where the Israelites filled pottery with explosives that shot out ceramic shrapnel everywhere. Ezekiel chapter 23 verse 20, there she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys and whose emission was like that of horses. Fluff, yeah, show me a BBC gangbang with gushing cream pies. Anything from Song of Solomon edit, wow, my first Reddit gold. Thank you kind internet stranger. Y'all ain't never heard of No Superbook before? But in all seriousness, it's older than me and was I think the first anime produced for the US specifically. Adern naming all the animals while trying not to get eaten by the dinosaurs. Assuming they get to take some creative license, the missing years of Jesus Christ. From 13 to 30. Failing that, the entire Sodom and Gomorrah arc. All of it. The part where Lot's own daughters pull a Bill Cosby on him. Yael and her tent peg murder. I would be so stoked to see that scene. Anime would make so much blood and it would be creepy AF. This is actually a really good idea. You should pitch this to Netflix. Prophet Elisha and the she-bear. He gets mocked by 42 children for being bald, prays to God for retribution. He answers with a she-bear that mauls the 42 ewes. Got to be Samson destroying the Philistine temple, David versus Goliath, or the parting of the Red Sea. The Hollywood-type treatments are never true to the actual biblical rendition. Even the epic Red Sea scene in the Ten Commandments, although technically a miracle of its time, strays enormously from the biblical rendition. I'd like to see an animated version of any of the three that stays pretty close to the Bible story and uses the technology to give the same sense of awe and inspiration that the Bible itself does. Jesus flipping over tables could be cool. Moses talking to the burning bush trippin' DMT balls. The one where Jesus makes some demons go into a guy's pigs, then the demon pigs go drown themselves, running this guy's livelihood. The table flip. Genesis OFC. Adon determined all of the animals were not a suitable helpmeet before the deity God created Eve. Oh my. The Song of Solomon. Smiley face. I don't think anyone has ever animated when the Hebrews killed a bunch of Canaanites after they got their foreskins chopped off so they could marry Hebrew women. The Bible described it as a clever ruse. When Jephthah SP comes home after God helps him win a war and his daughter greets him. Which means now has to sacrifice her to God. They'll have this super kawaii daughter be all like Okairi Oto San or however you spell it, then despair washes over him. Then in the Bible it says she goes off for a month in the mountains to lament her virginity. Or something like that. I dunno, they can make that part Eki or something. Then dramatic music when Jephthah has to sacrifice his daughter as a burnt offering. Massive budget on the flames, and a voice actor loses her voice for months after doing the scene screaming her lungs out. Really hammer in the horror of the Bible the same way Grave of the Fireflies hammers in despair and sadness. Hands down the Book of Revelation. Would make a great Save the World from the End of the World anime. The fluffing revelation. And he saw and behold. Jesus Joestar resurrecting. Did I read this whole comment thread without someone saying the Book of Daniel, or is my Reddit app hiding the best comments? The whole thing would be defined as a viewer by the tonal and story-telling shift. The first 18 to 22-ish episodes would be the first 6 chapters. You'd go through the introduction of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and of Daniel and his 3 friends. You'd go through the trial of health around their dietary preferences. Good moment to pull some modern commentary against a modern processed food diet. You'd get the dream of the 4 kingdoms. You know, where the king wakes from a dream and decides it was important. He tells his wise men including Daniel to tell him what he dreamed and what it meant. Not getting the answer he wanted initially, he sentences them all to death. Until Daniel gets his vision, which would play out on its own as an avant-garde filler episodio, and he becomes a trusted advisor as a result. You keep going. You do the whole Den of Lions thing and Crazy King and attempted murder by fire parts, and it's all an epic adventure with an odd undercurrent. And then tonal shift. Change the animation. Get less linear. The vision of beasts from the sea. A beast with 10 horns eats the planet but is undone by its own horns. You'd have a parallel, more narrative story to this episode like the boat in Watchmen, where you follow the story of a land of a lot of kings warring and ultimately decided by a deus ex machina. You keep going with the ram and the goat and the 70 weeks and kings of the north and south. You're aiming for a series that is comforting with a hero against a crazy world which turns as hard as Evangelion did at the end. And then it becomes the downfall of the world told in non-linear, bizarre shorts that only slightly reference back. Yeah. I dig that. Sodom and Gomorrah. Judges chapter 6 plus the whole story of Gideon. I wonder how they will play out the story. Gideon as a character is one of the most relatable in the Bible, just an ordinary guy trying to live in a pretty messed up type of world. Action Bible, anyone? Ehud assassinating Eglon. Fat rolls absorbing the sword, Eglon garbageting himself all over the place in epic fashion while Ehud awkwardly leaves, all while the guards think Eglon's just hitting the John after eating Chipotle. If you count the Apocrypha, deuterocanonical books, Tobit, particularly this scene, when they had finished eating and drinking they wanted to retire, so they took the young man and brought him into the bedroom. Then Tobias remembered the words of Raphael, and he took the fish's liver and heart out of the bag where he had them and put them on the embers of the incense. The odor of the fish so repelled the demon that he fled to the remotest parts of Egypt. But Raphael followed him, and at once bound him there hand and foot. Tobit 8-1-3. The whole plot of Tobit is about a young man, Tobias, who is to marry his cousin, Sarah, but learns she has lost all 7 of her husbands to the demon of lust, Asmodeus, on her wedding night. So God, in his providence, sends the angel Raphael to earth disguised as one of Tobias' distant cousins. Raphael gives him fish guts to repel the demon. That screams of a great anime romance adaptation. If you don't count the Apocrypha, the Book of Job. I would love to see the truth of the universe revealed to him. You could go for some Fullmetal Alchemist style gate opening there, where he meets God, truth. Job 38-39. Elihu is clearly a Sunere, since he was initially angry and hostile to Job like his other friends, Job chapter 32 verse 2, but then stood up to his defense, Job chapter 32 verse 6, Job 37.